Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining me here today. And like we said, you can put questions in the chat. We'll certainly have some time at the end to answer them, and I'll try to help as much as I can. So just to get things started, a little bit about me. As you heard, I have a T5 complete spinal cord injury since December '96. Use a manual wheelchair, work at McGee. I'm an Eagle Scout and still involved in scouting today. Is a big part of my life. Um, First slide I started to put together thinking, why travel? And then I thought, really, I shouldn't have to convince you to travel. My question really would be, why not travel? There's still lots of opportunities for us to take advantage of. And I've found that, a little bit of creativity, uh, we can accomplish almost anything that we want in terms of travel. So today's topic's going to cover these ones. So first, talk about booking a hotel, booking a flight, talk about the day that you've got to get to the airport and get ready to go, and then my favorite vacation destination, and that's cruising. So a couple things that I want to make sure I get out of there. Um, it's impossible for me to know what disability everybody has. And so I go into this recognizing everybody's disability is different. So what works for me might work for you. It might not work for you. But one thing I do know that is if you don't try, it definitely won't work. The other thing is that while I may talk about my favorite cruise lines or things like that, I don't work for any of them. I just travel a bunch. So just trying to share my favorite things and what works for me. So thought that was important to get out there for you. So we'll begin thinking about booking a hotel. I can remember, shortly after my injury, or actually, yeah, a couple, like maybe a week or two after my injury, when I finally got the rehab, saying like I can understand all kinds of things that, are going to be a challenge for me to do after my spinal cord injury, but I really hope that I can still travel. And I was told absolutely you can. Um, and then it was like a lot of things to learn about. So the reason I like to talk about travel and share these kind of tips with you is to try to help you avoid any of the mistakes or pitfalls that myself or others have experienced. So when it comes to booking a hotel, if you've done this before, you've probably recognized that the word accessible has many meanings. And just because they say it is accessible, it does not necessarily mean accessible for you. So it's really important. I find the best way is to ask direct questions. So complete spinal cord injury, so I cannot get up and walk. I can't get into a tub. So I want to make sure that the room that I'm staying in has a roll-in shower as opposed to a tub. Other things that are so important in hotels to ask about today is the height of the bed, because there are some that you're going to go to that have these killer high beds that are really a challenge to get in and out of. So especially when you're tired at the end of the day, I want to get in bed and relax. I don't want it to be a workout just to get in bed. One of the biggest ones, and I think this goes with so much about the life we live as people with disabilities, is to don't make assumptions. You can't assume that because you need a shower chair that they're going to have one at the hotel. Your odds are better of them having one, or at least knowing the answer, if you ask ahead of time. So those are important. The other insider tip I would say that I found to be very helpful is that rather than calling the national 1-800 numbers when you're making a reservation, if you're able to find out the local number for the hotel, which isn't usually that hard, calling and talking to somebody who is physically inside that building is usually really, really helpful. Often you can talk to somebody in housekeeping. They're going to be able to answer all the specifics about the rooms. So just some tips that I wanted to get out there to keep in mind. As it gets closer to my actual stay, I like to call the hotel and reconfirm, make sure that the room that I booked 2 months ago that they said was going to be accessible is still noted in my reservation that it's going to be accessible. I like to ask who I spoke to, write their name down just in case, there's any issues. And I also make sure that I tell them, like, I'm so excited and looking forward to the trip and anxious to stay at your hotel. Being nice from the beginning, I found people are so willing to help you if you're nice instead of, confrontational. So once you get to the front desk of the hotel, I should also say, other things to ask about could be parking. Do they have accessible parking? And especially if you happen to use a van, if you're using a higher van or taller van, make sure that can go in their garage or they have space for you. So once I get to the hotel, check in, reconfirm, make sure it's accessible room with a roll-in shower. Um, Once I get to the room, I do not unpack anything until I make sure that the bathroom works and that the bed is the right kind of height, and then I can get in and out of it. If I do that and it's correct, then great. Then I can start to unpack, relax, and enjoy. If it's not correct, often I'll call the front desk and ask them to come up to the room or send somebody so that they can actually see and understand what the challenge is. If you're not doing well, then ask for a manager to come up. Sometimes it doesn't go right. So I try to be firm, but I have to be realistic. And by doesn't go right, meaning if there's not, even though they told me there's a roll-in shower, but somehow there really isn't, I kind of have two options. I can go stay at another hotel, or I can be old school and wash my hair in the sink and, kind of get washed up in bed or washed up. So I have options. And you know what? A lot of times, if I'm staying somewhere just overnight, I can be a lot more flexible. If I'm staying somewhere where for multiple nights or for a week, well, then I have a real decision to make. So um, just, being realistic, bring a baseball hat just in case there's any issues. I've worn a baseball hat many times the next day. Couple quick fix solutions to know about is that many times over the years, I've had hotel maintenance remove a bathroom door. And sometimes just that 1 inch of entryway can make a big difference between me using that bathroom or not. Another one is they have the ability to lower a lot of these beds that are really high. They can take a set of box springs off to make it lower for us. So those are a couple quick fixes that have worked for me and I've found very helpful. If you've never done it before, I strongly encourage do a staycation at a local hotel. Gives you the chance to kind of try it out, get comfortable with it, see what works, what doesn't. Do you forget something? Do you need to take something else with you? And it's going to make you feel more comfortable when the time for a trip out of town comes into play. Next, we'll talk about booking a flight. And of course, I put this plane on there just really for entertainment and because it looks cool. That is not the kind of plane that I've ever been in. I have a saying, my friend Keith and I, who also has a disability and travels a lot, that I like my planes and boats big enough that there are more than one person in charge of them. And I'm sitting in the back very comfortable. But when it comes to booking a flight, I talk about doing your homework. If you're able to pick days and times that are less busy, especially if it's your first flight or your first couple flights, try and do that. Nowadays, airports are crowded and so are airplanes. I'm rarely on a flight that has empty seats. In the past, that used to be much easier to find. If there's an option to fly nonstop, sometimes even if it's $20, $30, $50 more, you will find that that's going to make your life a lot easier because you've only got to get on and off the plane once, which means they've also only got to check my chair once as opposed to twice, and there's just less option or less time or opportunity for things to go wrong. Sometimes, though, there are routes that you do have to connect to a second flight. And if you do that, I'm going to say I always like to make sure I have at least 2 hours in between the flights because I'm the first one on the plane and the last one off the plane. So that takes up a good bit, another 30 minutes probably, or sometimes 20, 30 minutes just getting off the plane. So know that in advance, make sure you have that time in between. You got to figure out, do you want a window seat or an aisle seat? And a lot of times the airline right away wants to put you in an aisle seat because it's easy. They get you down there, you just transfer, or if they have to lift you into a chair, that's an easy one. In my case, I have the ability to transfer from the aisle chair across, and I would prefer to sit in a window as opposed to an aisle. That way I don't have to worry about people climbing over me. But again, you take the option that works best for you, but just know that that's a choice you're going to need to make. Here's another one. Can you transfer yourself, or do you need someone to lift you? It is completely okay if you need somebody to lift you. That's what they have people there for. And I found that they really want to help. And the best way they can help is if I can actually advocate and tell them how they can help me. Also, each airline has an access department, so they can help you move you more towards the front of the plane and get you some better seats so you're not in the aisle chair playing bumper cars any longer than you need to. So my looks like I already shared the first insider tip, and that's that I prefer a window if possible. A lot of times too, they will offer to seat you in the bulkhead, which is the very, very first row. You have nobody sitting in front of you, which is good. You have a wall in front of you, but the negatives of that is that the armrests on those rows do not lift up. So for me to sit in a bulkhead, I actually do need somebody to lift me in and out of them. The other thing is that your bags need to be overhead for takeoff and landing. So that means you're going to have somebody help you get it down after the flight takes off. Maybe that's not an issue. Sometimes it is. The other piece is you may have to choose seats when you book online that aren't going to be ideal or perfect. Don't sweat it. A call to the access department can fix that. Or the day you check in, the gate agents usually have the ability to move you up as well. Other questions is they are going to ask you to know the height and weight of your chair. Is it rigid? Is it folding? If it's a power chair, what type of battery you have. So those are things that you may know off the top of your head, but maybe you don't. So be prepared. And I will also say that we've agreed this video is going to go on the YouTube site, and I'll send these slides out later too, so that people can have access to them. So now it's all excited. Time to arrive at the airport and time to figure out what do I do next. So arriving early is one of the biggest, most important things I can tell you. You do not want to be there at the last minute. You got to plan on not being able to use the bathroom. If you're able to walk, that's a different story. But if you're in a chair, even though they may tell you they have an aisle chair and can get you to the bathroom, trust me, it is not at all convenient. And the odds, if you can avoid it, you're going to want to do that. But that means you're going to need to plan ahead. You know, you're going to have extra time on there. So I'm always going to tell you, use the bathroom right before you get on the plane as close as you can, and then be ready to do it. Will you sit on your wheelchair cushion or not? If you're doing weight shifts actively, you know, do you need that cushion? I tend to sit on my cushion, two reasons. One, it does protect my butt. And secondly, I use a Roho cushion. If I'm sitting on it, then I don't have to worry about somebody squishing it, smashing it, or popping it when they try to slam their bags into the overhead compartment up above. The other thing is, what items do I want to be able to access during the flight? Whether that's medicine, snacks, a drink, make sure that they're handy. I would like to, you know, if possible, I take a backpack on with me, and I like to put that under my seat so that I can access those things, maybe a newspaper or magazine as well. Just important to be able to have access. Going through security, you know, sometimes the least favorite part of the trip. If you have TSA pre-check, it's wonderful. And if you travel, you know, several times, TSA pre-check costs about $85, but it's good for 5 years. I find it is well worth it because you speed through security, much shorter lines. They just check your hands or your chair as opposed to going through a pat down. One of my biggest pet peeves is because you hear all the time, keep your eyes on your bag, but you get to security, you're putting your bag on the belt to go through, and sometimes you're waiting for a couple minutes while you're waiting for somebody to take you back. And I always try to keep my eyes on my bag just to make sure it's safe. Knock on wood, never had a problem, but I try to keep my eyes on the bag. Point out any sensitive areas or limitations you have. Do you have metal or devices? Do you have a colostomy? Do you have an indwelling catheter? Just let them know so that they're aware of them. I always try and smile and be nice to them. It's a job, it's a grueling job for them. But again, the nicer I can be, the nicer they're going to be to me. Hopefully, all of this goes well. You're through security in a couple minutes and you're on your way to the gate. Try to get to the gate at least 60 minutes in advance. Once the gate agents arrive, I always try to go up and just, let them know that I'm there. Let them know that I need a gate check tag, which is a tag that they'll put on the back of my chair that says they're supposed to bring it up as soon as we get to our destinations. Ask what time they're going to board because, like I said, you're gonna board first. And then I always try to use the bathroom as close to that time as possible, but I want to make sure I'm back within 10 minutes before the boarding time, because it is important for me to get on first. When I get down, I'm going to go in my chair down to the bottom of the jetway before I get onto an aisle chair, and I'm going to show you what that looks like next. Before I give them my chair to take down below, I always make sure that I'm taking my cushion off, taking my side guards off. I have a pouch underneath where I keep my wallet, medicine, and keys. I'm taking that off. If you use a smart drive device, you can decide whether you want to take it off or leave it on. Just be aware. I try to not leave anything on that can get lost or fall out, so that I never want to get my chair back and it's missing something. So I can't walk. A lot of times people ask how I get on a plane, and this is how. Pretty much they're going to take me down to the jetway, which is the entry to the plane, and then I'm going to transfer onto one of these very skinny chairs. They're going to strap me into that. I'm going to hold my knees and elbows for dear life as they back me down into the aisle, and then we'll transfer into the seat. But if you haven't seen one of these or seen that process, you can Google it. I'm sure you can find some videos that'll show you that. But I thought it'd be helpful to show the picture just in case. Once I'm on the plane, take a deep breath and relax. You're going on vacation. Flight attendants are always really nice. If you need help, let them know, and they are always so willing to help. If you're not sitting on your cushion, make sure it is carefully stored in an overhead bin, or you can ask. Sometimes they may put it in the closet up front. The other thing I've shared that is very, very important is to remember you are the last off the plane, and your chair will be brought up to the jetway when you're done. So you got to wait till everybody else gets off. They'll bring the aisle chair on, transfer you to it, take you off the plane, and then get you into your chair. Once off the plane, I always want to visually inspect my chair to make sure everything is okay. Cross my fingers, and that works out okay. If you need help getting to baggage claim or connection, just ask. They will help you. Hit a bathroom along the way, because don't forget, you've probably been on the plane for a little while. And drink fluids if you've been drinking less while in flight. If I'm on a longer flight, I'm making sure I'm not drinking like a 20-ounce bottle of water over a short period of time. I'm going to really be careful and safe. Drink a little bit at a time, maybe drink as I get closer to getting off the plane, so that I know my bladder's not full and I'm not going to have any issues. So moving on to favorite type of vacation. I see a question in the chat. I don't know if this is permissible, but I have a video from my page of the aisle chair if it helps. I'm sure it's very helpful, Leon, and thanks for sharing that for folks to see. So gonna move on to my favorite type of vacation is taking a cruise. As you heard in the introduction, I've been on 12 cruises, and people ask all the time, why do I love to cruise? And I think there's several reasons why I like to do it. One, it is peaceful and relaxing. This is me kind of like just hanging out, eating breakfast on the balcony of the ship. I mean, you look at that behind me, how could you not love and enjoy that? It's so, so peaceful. The other thing that I share with people is, my favorite ships are the newer ones. They're really big. They may be 5,000, 6,000 passengers on them, but don't be scared by that. Plenty of elevators to get around. But they're built with access as a part of their original plans, as opposed to having been retrofitted later. So that's really, really important. Bathrooms, unlike hotels, bathrooms are consistent on each ship. So I know that that roll-in shower is going to be there. It's going to work for me. Another reason why I like cruises, I'm going to get to see a few different places in the week without having to move my luggage, change rooms, or worry that, I'm going to have an an access problem somewhere else. The other thing I will tell you is if you do not get off the ship all week, you will not be bored. There are tons of things to do and lots of fun things to do. So, accessible rooms on a ship are much more spacious than a regular room on a ship. So you can see this room here, I tried to take actually, it looks like my wife took it probably from the balcony. So right by the bottom, you're seeing the ramp that goes out to the balcony. Seeing me sitting there, of course, I'm actually looking at probably the calendar or the schedule, trying to plan out my schedule. Uh, Bed is very easy height for me to transfer into. Bathroom is very, very accessible. I think I'm going to show you that next. Has a roll-in shower, so that works well. If you're looking at that shower bench that comes on and you're wondering what's going on, I always buy these stadium seat cushions. They're like maybe $8 or something. You can get them. This case, these came from Dick's Sporting Goods, or you can get them from Amazon. I always take one or two of them with me, tape them onto that shower bench that's there. One, it gives me a little extra height, but it also gives me some extra padding for my butt. But this is all very easy, very manageable to work on. So lots of fun things to do. This is me in a ride called the North Star, where it's actually they take you up high above the ship and you're able to see the whole ship, the ocean, and it is just really, really super cool. No problem getting on or off that, being in a chair. Again, staff is just super helpful there. Um, choosing a cruise is challenging, but I try to provide some tips for you here. One of the biggest ones that even though I mentioned I love these big ships and there could be 6,000 passengers on there, there's only 46 accessible rooms on the ships that I like. So I always try to plan a year out if possible. I know that I like to go on cruises in February and July, so try to book as early as possible. If you've never done a cruise, or you or your family member, your spouse, your partner isn't sure if you're going to like it, or you're really hesitant or scared, try to take a 3, 4, or 5 night cruise for your first one, just to kind of get a little taste or a little a little feel for what it's like. For the first time, if you do, next slot tip was depending on where you live, there's actually ports within driving distance. New York City, Baltimore, Bayonne, New Jersey. I love to leave out of Bayonne. I can leave my house at 9 o'clock in the morning and be on the boat at 11 o'clock, which means going through, getting check-in process, getting my luggage checked, and actually being on board the ship in less than 2 hours. It's a wonderful thing. You're going to have to decide what type of cabin you like. Do you like inside cabin, outside cabin, which has a window, balcony cabin, which is my favorite. I love to sit out there and just look at nothing, just water passing by and seeing nothing. Whichever you choose, as long as it's accessible, you'll have the same features, meaning you'll have that same kind of bathroom I described, and it'll work for you. Accessible cabins are larger. You can get lots of help out there. Cruise lines have access departments that can answer your questions for you. People can arrange to have equipment delivered to the room on their ship. Hoyer lifts in particular, scooters can be rented and delivered there if people need it. There are travel agents that can help you, and just tons of things that you can find on the internet that can really help you too. My tips when you're boarding the ship, you'll see the blue sign with a wheelchair guy and an arrow on it. So make sure you go to the accessible line. They'll speed you through a little quicker than others. If you need help getting on the ship, because you are going to go up two pretty big ramps to board it, just ask for help. In my case, I always joke that I work hard to get up there, but by the time I get on the ship, I've already worked off my first desserts or my first ice cream, because they are very good options to have on there. Um, I told you about bathrooms, but the other thing that's great is that the show venues are accessible. You've got good seats that you can sit in, unlike an old theater that you go to where you're kind of stuck in the back corner or almost in an aisle in the way. So you've got great vantage points. Pools on the ships have a lift, and they have staff who know how to use them. So that's very helpful too. Um, when it comes to excursions and ports of call, you have to realize that the ADA only applies in the US. So on some cruises I've been on, where I've stopped in Miami or stopped in Port Canaveral, which is the Orlando area, yes, I've been able to book accessible excursions. Other times we don't. We just kind of stroll and go through town, go through the ports. I can jump in taxis or a minivan, and my wife or the driver will help get my chair in. But finding a van or a shuttle with a lift is a bit of a challenge. But you can do some homework ahead of time, ask the access desk. Sometimes they can help you. Um, and as I've said before, even if you do not get off the ship the entire cruise, you will have plenty of activities to enjoy. Um, my insider tips, as I've tried to provide for you, booking as early as you can is possible. Unbelievable shows, entertainment. The food is great. Told you about the stadium seat cushions. The other one, if I'm not leaving from a local port and I have to fly, I'm always going to fly a day ahead of time so that I know I'm there and don't have a problem. There are times that there are delays leaving out of Philadelphia, and the last thing you want to do is, you've saved up, you've planned for this trip for a long time, and God forbid there's a flight problem and you miss your ship. That creates hassles. They'll try to get you there at the next port of call, but I never want that to be me. Um, why do I do it? I told you about relaxing, but good food. You can tell just by the look on my face how relaxed I am. You see, I've got some sun. This is an amazing dessert with like fried cheesecakes, some cream, and this caramel popcorn on top. Might have been one of the best desserts that I've ever had. And I'm actually sitting outside at a venue called Central Park. And yes, it looks just like Central Park in New York City, but it's on the cruise ship. Um, some of my favorite shows. This is a picture of the Aqua Show, where literally these guys are high divers or they're walking on a tightrope, and they're doing it while the ship is moving. So you can probably tell I took this picture. So you can probably tell just by the view of this that I had great seats to do this. So love the shows. There's an ice skating show on the ship. There's the Aqua shows on there. There's the Broadway shows that are on there. It's just amazing. Final thoughts before I open it up for us for questions and answers. For any type of travel, and I think anything with our disability, it is a lot harder to be spontaneous. So plan ahead as best as you can. Do your homework and ask good questions. Don't make assumptions. Check first. Be flexible. But most importantly, as I've said, get out and have some fun. You can do this. You can make this work. A little bit of creativity sometimes, but you can find a way to make it happen. And the reason I've gone on so many cruises is because I absolutely love them. I mean, people ask all the time where my favorite place when I go on a ship is. My favorite place is just sitting out on the balcony, just watching the water or other ships go by, and it's just such a relaxing, peaceful feeling. I work hard so that I can have the money to go on vacation, and I want to make sure that I'm able to enjoy it. So, um, there are lots of resources out there. One who's really, really great. There's a guy named Corey Lee. I don't know if you've ever seen any of his blog posts that he does. He's got a great wheelchair travel blog, Curb Free with Corey Lee. He's been to lots of destinations. He uses a power chair, so talks about it from a different perspective, but is a great resource that's out there. And again, my email is here that people can reach out if they need help, and happy to do that. And with that, I think the plan is to stop sharing my screen, and we can open this up for any questions that anybody has. So
And everyone, you now have access to verbally ask Mark if you have any questions.